Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight the board is having a study session on the central dispatch question. And just to let everybody know, this will be the first time that the board has seen any full written proposal or heard the proposal. And with us this evening to talk to us to kick this off is Chief Jeff Watson, Police Chief in Brownstown, and Bob Heck, who's with the System Administrator for DMA, and he's with the DCC, if I'm correct. And after their presentation, they've agreed to take questions directly from the audience, just so that everybody can get a question answered. We'd appreciate it if everybody would just ask your question, wait for the answer, and then everybody will get a chance to make their comment or ask their question. We'll do our best to get them answered. So without further ado, Jeff and Bob, if you want to come up.
So thank you for hosting us here tonight. Before I get into the PowerPoint presentation, I want to kind of let everybody know that, number one, why I'm here, why I took up this project, and why I'm not here, right? So I became the chairperson of the Downriver, thank you. I became the chairperson of the Downriver Mutual Aid Police Chiefs back in 2020. And shortly after I took that job over, Bob Heck approached me and said, we have some concerns about the future of the DMA dispatch, which consists of 911 and radio service. And as you may or may not know, DMA provides the radio system and the 911 system for all of us in Downriver. And Bob, came to me with some issues and concerns about the future because, as we just learned yesterday, in 2025, our current radio contract, which started out with Airbus and then was bought by Cassidian, was eventually bought up by Motorola. And Motorola has been honoring that contract, but at the end of, in April of 2025, they have now told us that the current radio system is going to be not supported anymore. Bob manages the budget for the Downriver Mutual Aid. Well, I guess you did until you retired on me the other day. But Bob has agreed. Bob felt so committed to this dispatch project that he has stayed on as a consultant to help me work on this project as we move forward. So Bob has some concerns, and without getting into the weeds, I'll let Bob talk about that at some point during the presentation. But basically, Bob identified a problem and said we need to get a study done for Downriver Mutual Aid to see about the possibility of consolidating our dispatch services. And we're very unique in the state that we have single-seat PSAPs. A PSAP is a public safety answering point, and that's a dispatch center. It's a fancy name to say a dispatch center. In South Downriver, every single agency, and when I talk about South Downriver, I'm talking about Riverview and Brownstown on the north end all the way south to Monroe County, including Groseal Township, Gibraltar, Flat Rock, Rockwood. All of us have single-seat PSAPs, right? And let me also start tonight by telling, I know I have several dispatchers in the group here. Some I have worked with, and I know a lot of them. And whatever we point out as a potential problem with the system that we have, it's not on them. They do a tremendous job. And no one has more respect and admiration for the job that they do day in and day out, because I've seen it work and I've tried to help. And I'm here to tell you, with 31 years in law enforcement now and holding several positions all across the board, that's one job I can't do, and I wouldn't try to do it. So the day-to-day operations that we ask them to do in their environment is they do a tremendous job. And when we point out issues or concerns, remember, it's not on them. It's not their job to address these issues. It's on the leadership of DMA and our individual communities to try to fix these problems because they're a big piece of this, why we need to do something as we move into the future. So I wanted to get that out on the table. And then lastly, before I get into the presentation, is I'm not here, this isn't a sales pitch. This is me telling Grozeal why it's important to me, why I felt it was important to the Township of Brownstown. I have with me tonight Township Supervisor Ed Smith. I have the Fire Chief, Jeff Drulard, my Deputy Chief, Bob Lafayette's back there. We all feel it's important. And in the 90s, we came up with a system that we needed to in Wayne County. Wayne County is very unique, and it's different than the rest of the state because Wayne County doesn't provide us the same services that other counties across the state do. We don't get to take pre-arraigned prisoners to the county jail. If you go one county in any direction from Wayne County, they get to do that. If you have a prisoner, you take them to the county jail. That's part of their function. That's what they do, but not here in Wayne County. So we had to come up with a way, and we built police departments with jails connected to our dispatch centers, and we said to our dispatch staff, that's your job now to help us watch these prisoners in the jail. And why I bought into this and why I agreed to help Bob is that I sat back and I thought about what keeps me up at night, what worries me at this level, and what worries me are how these people, these individuals, are managing what they're asked to manage in an environment, and how would we manage a crisis situation that we now has become commonplace across this country and this nation. In the 90s, active shooter wasn't even on our radar. We didn't even have the term active shooter. Also in the 90s, we didn't have cell phones in everybody's pocket. We're expecting more and more and more out of our dispatchers, and we're expecting that with one person working in every community. So I'm not here to sell you on anything. The ultimate decision on whether Grozeal decides to join this consortium is completely on Grozeal. We have several communities in South Downriver that have signed on, and we just finished our interlocal agreement. We'll be getting those out to those other communities. But we're not here to sell it to Grozeal. We don't really need Grozeal. We'd love to have Grozeal because you're a part of this Downriver Mutual Aid family, and that's why I'm here. So I'm here. I've got the whole evening cleared out, and I think Bob would agree. We're here until you need us until you're done with us. We'll answer any questions that you have. What I also can't answer are what do we do with internal issues, right, and internal problems and concerns. I had to work that out in my building, and I'd be happy to give ideas, but that's ultimately on this board, your chief, both your chiefs, to figure out how you make this work if you choose to join. But once again, I'm not here to give a sales pitch. I'm here just to present why we're doing this, why we feel it's important to Downriver, and then we're here to answer any questions. So, Bob, you want anything to add before I get into the PowerPoint?
I think you'll touch on the surcharge.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll talk a little bit about what the current surcharge is for 911. It's 42 cents. So for every device that you have at home, a cell phone, you pay 42 cents a month for that. DMA is one of 4 911 districts within Wayne County. So what happens is the state collects that money from the carriers, and then the carriers, then the state will push that down to the county, and then we get those dollars. And that's how we've maintained all the equipment to date, right? So the $11 million radio system that we put in 12 years ago. That was funded by the 42 cents. All of the 911 equipment that we have at every police department downriver was funded by that 42 cents. So Chief Watson will talk a little bit about what our future plans are for that, if we're able to get the state to agree with us to perhaps have a surcharge increase.
All right. So this was a Click on Detroit Channel 4 news story that came out about a month ago. Deputy Chief Lafayette said, "Hey, did you see this article?" And I looked it up, and this is the night of the Michigan State incident. And there have been, I would encourage everybody to go on at Channel 4's website. They have really done a great job of I guess, bringing to light the great job that those Ingham County dispatchers did that night. And people have sang the praises of how they managed through that situation. But just to give you some scope of what any of us might face in a critical incident, they received 2,100 calls the night of the Michigan State shooting in 5-hour period. And this is just a map that the news put out where those were coming from. And you have to realize in a situation like that, there's a lot of unknown. There's a lot of every slamming door became another gunshot. Every police officer that went in civilian clothes to try to help became another shooter. Ingham County is being praised for managing that because they have a county-wide dispatch center, right? In my building, I'm here to tell you, we couldn't have managed a crisis of that magnitude. I only have one dispatcher on duty at a given time. The whole idea behind a consolidated dispatch center is to bring people in to an environment where they can work and help each other. I'm going to go to another slide because I think I cover this and I get ahead of myself here. So a consolidated center is what most of the state utilizes. If you go any county, north, south, east, or west from here, they are running county-wide dispatch centers. Monroe County has one dispatch center, and they dispatch for the entire county. Every police and fire agency in Monroe goes out of there. Oxford, we know about what happened in Oxford a couple of years ago. Oxford managed that because they have Oakland County's central dispatch center that managed that. Otherwise, Oxford is very similar in size to Brownstown or Grosse Ile. We just don't have the resources individually to be able to set up a dispatch center where we have multiple people on duty at any given time. So what's the problem? In the 8 communities making up South Downriver currently, all of us operate on a single-seat PSAP center. That means one dispatcher on duty at a time. Most of them have ancillary duties. We talked about the jails. We also asked them to manage the front desk. Some of them do records details and enter tickets and all that stuff. And the one thing that you can't do with a single-seat PSAP is you can't properly offer EMD dispatch to your community. You have to think about what EMD dispatch is. Emergency medical dispatch is a system where when you call 911, somebody picks up the phone on the other end and helps that person that may or may not know how to stop bleeding or how to do CPR. That person on the other end of the line talks them through. If that person's the only one in there, then who is sending the police and fire resources to the scene? We can train single-seat PSAP dispatchers to be EMD trained, but are we doing a service to them or to the community by asking them then to provide that service with only one person in there? When all the DMA in the field we can utilize the Downriver Mutual Aid agreement to mobilize our forces anywhere in the Downriver Mutual Aid area. The DMA is I believe the oldest mutual aid pact in the state. It's one of the oldest in the country. And we do a tremendous job getting our police and fire resources to a community to help. The one place we can't do that in is in our dispatch centers. Last summer, the city of Flat Rock had an incident with the Ford Motor Company leaking fuel into the sewer system. And some of you may or may not know that there was one night that was particularly concerning, and they activated Downriver Mutual Aid because they were going to start pumping fire foam into the sewers to mitigate the fumes that were in the sewer system. There was some very real concerns about what that might do if those fumes backed up into homes, and thank goodness it didn't happen. But there were concerns about explosions, and they needed help closing streets. Our fire chief, who's also the Downriver Mutual Aid Fire Chief's Chair, was on scene. I was on scene. We were helping. I told Flat Rock, I said, hey, you know what? I held over an entire shift of police officers. I know the fire department has sent you resources. I said, I've got a dispatcher that I can send down to help. You know what they told me? That's great, but where am I going to put them? I've got one position down here. They'll come here and sit next to me, but we haven't designed this or set this up so that they can help each other to manage a crisis situation. So back to what I said earlier, in 2021, DMA commissioned a study from Mission Critical Partners. This is a nationally recognized company that they look at PSAP consolidations all around the country. This is a quote, and many of you may have seen this and read the study. This is a quote from their executive summary. It says, under normal circumstances, status quo is identified as an option. However, due to the staffing situation in the region, and here it says 83% of the PSAPs, because we were looking at all of Downriver Mutual Aid, it says 83% of the PSAPs are single seat operations. In Downriver South, that's 100%. All of us are run a single seat PSAP. So it says right there in the executive summary, status quo is not a viable consideration. So now you've had a professional company come in to look at what we do in Downriver Mutual Aid and how we manage these things, and they've said, you can't keep doing what you're doing. You need to fix it somehow. We approached all the Downriver, and we attended meetings, and guess what? North Downriver told us, we don't need that because we already did that. Back in 2009, the North communities, or several of the North communities, Wyandotte, Southgate, Lincoln Park, and Allen Park, they approached this back in 2009, and they addressed it by consolidating out of Wyandotte Police Department. So those 4 communities are working out of Central Dispatch. The reason that they didn't see a need to join this is because they already have it, and they already have seen it work, and they already have multi-seat PSAPs. They already have EMD dispatch. We're going through the accreditation process at Brownstown right now. EMD is a standard that you have to meet, and I can't offer that right now because I only have one dispatcher in there. Of the PSAPs in Michigan, there are only 14 remaining single-seat centers. That was from a national study that was done about a month ago. We got, someone sent it to us. There's 14 single-seat PSAPs remaining in the state of Michigan, and 10 of them are in the Downriver Mutual Aid, and 8 of them are in South Downriver. So we're very unique to having single-seat PSAPs. So what was our solution? Consolidate our DMA resources to increase the level of services that we provide while also increasing a tremendous level of efficiency. We talked here about Downriver North, Wyandotte, Lincoln Park, Allen Park. They've been successfully operating since 2009, and that's why, once again, I got ahead of myself a little bit, but that's why they didn't see the necessity to join this project. The other part of the solution is to consolidate DMA South into a multi-seat PSAP being hosted at Brownstown PD. Why has Brownstown agreed to host this? Because number one, I felt it was important to Downriver Mutual Aid, to Downriver, to Brownstown, and because I have a very large building that was built back in 1999, I have plenty of room in there. It was built thinking that right by now we would have over 100 officers working out of Brownstown PD. I'm not even at 50% capacity in that building. I have lots of room. That actually we're looking at is a temporary facility, but I have space to bring in what Bob says the equipment we need to build out a multi-seat dispatch center at Brownstown PD. The current multipurpose room that we have, which some of you have been in for training, that's where we intend to host this. And we were looking at 8 seats, at least 6. We're getting, right now, we're getting some companies to come in to look at the furniture. Bob has some budget money set aside to build this. They'll be working in an environment with new furniture. They're raising platforms. Bob really wants to make it top notch, and so we're working on that right now. We would also then bring on additional full-time and part-time staff to accommodate this project, and then we would cost share with the other communities to improve the service and efficiency. That's phase 1. Phase 2 is what we see the future here for all of Downriver, so that we can bring this all into the entire Downriver Mutual Aid area, and that would be to seek a 911 surcharge increase for the county or the DMA area. So Wayne County currently it's in the 16th percentile of counties with PSAPs that only charge the minimum of 42 cents per line. 83% of the counties in the state that have a PSAP charge more than 42 cents. 58% charge at least $1.50, and 18% charge the full $3. Bob has estimated that if we could get to around the $2 to $2.50 mark, DMA could generate enough revenue to make this a fully self-sustaining entity, and we could provide the service to the entire Downriver Mutual Aid area like the other counties do, with the 911 funding covering all the costs associated with the PSAP. That would also then free up budget money from all of our budgets to go back into our police and fire budgets to help shore up other areas. We all know we're doing much more with less in this world we're living in right now. The 250 would manage and maintain the entire system, and we're even looking at some grant funding for a brand new building that would host this down the road. The target date for the 911 surcharge is August of 2024. That's the first countywide election that isn't a special election, and that would be the first opportunity that we could get the county probably to put this on. We're looking right now, we have an Attorney General opinion that says that we may be able to run this as a vote just in the Downriver Mutual Aid area. The communities that are part of the DMA dispatch area, and we could separate that group and run the surcharge on that. If you think about $2 a line, that's about $1.50 more than what you're paying right now. And think about what that would cost you per month. It's less than $20 a year for someone to be able to support a professional, fully staffed PSAP. So we think we could campaign and get this passed. If the county wants to join in, it would benefit all the other PSAPs in the county. Bob mentioned there are 4. There's Downriver Mutual Aid, there's Eastern Wayne, which are the Grosse Points, there's Detroit, and then there's Western Wayne. And out of Western Wayne, you have Dearborn United, that is a large consolidated PSAP that manages Wayne, Westland, Dearborn, Garden City, Inkster. They have a very large facility up there. It would benefit them. It would benefit everybody in Wayne County if the county chooses to put it on the ballot. But we're in a position where we kind of need that, and we're willing to take on that campaign. And if it's just for Downriver Mutual Aid, then we're going to campaign here. But if it's got to be countywide, we're going to campaign across the whole county to make that happen. And then phase 3 would be to bring Downriver Central Dispatch and Downriver South Dispatch together into a new DMA PSAP. It would also, this new facility would house training facility, it would be an operations center, it would be equipment storage for DMA and DCC. And the funding for that is they're looking at grant funding. I know that Jim Perry is working on that, and Bob tells me that we've already started a grant for an operations and dispatch center. And then those of you that know Jim Perry, if anybody can find it, he will find it. He knows the right people to talk to in Lansing and in Washington, D.C. to help us with that funding. So, we think we can make that happen. If not, we got a good thing going in South Downriver, I think. We could continue to do what we're doing in cost sharing and make it happen. So that would be phase 3 to bring this all together. And that would probably be around 2025 because we would get this in during the August 2024 primary election and then move on from there. We understand there are challenges to individual communities. These are the answers that I don't have for you tonight, and I may or may not have any in the future. Okay. But how do we manage those ancillary duties? What do you do with your jail? What do you do with your admin lines? What do you do with your front desk? What do you do with the current dispatch staff? Changes in operating procedures that differ from how you operate right now. Educating the community on the benefits of the consolidation. EMD dispatch, more staffing with specific duties. There are challenges to every community, and I'm no exception. I had to reorganize my command staff because I don't intend on having this new dispatch center manage my jail or the front desk. They will take admin lines for any community that wants to, but I'm taking away those ancillary duties, and we're going to manage those with our current command staff and make that work because I can't ask them to take on additional communities and provide this great dispatch service, but then also ask them to be responsible for my prisoners, be responsible for my front desk. We found a way to make it work. Grow Zeal. If anybody wants suggestions or ideas, I'm here to help, but I can't solve those issues for the individual communities. What's it going to cost? This is if you saw my Riverview presentation, this is updated and we worked on this. We feel so strongly in this project that I was able to convince my township board for 2024. I'm projecting that I'll be, my dispatch budget comes in at about $620, probably by then about $630,000. And what I asked my township board to do is, because I understand other communities will have some decisions to make and they're going to have to find money in a budget that may or may not be already written or approved. I got my board to agree to keep on my current dispatch budget for 2024, and then we cost share with the remaining staff that I need to bring on. And mine comes just shy of about half of what the staffing would be. And then in year 2025, we're looking at the cost per agency. We're about 50% to full cost sharing. And then by 2026, that's an estimate because my current dispatch contract is up prior to that, but that's an estimate. Should they get a 3% raise? And as you can see, Brownstown still is the biggest piece of South Downriver as far as calls for service, the size, our population, and our cost is still well ahead of everybody else's in there. And if you look at Grow Zeal, that's the projected cost that we're looking at for you to join. We met with all the chiefs some time back, and we chose a cost-sharing model that we thought was fair and equitable to all the departments based on the number of incidents that a city or township generates. We removed incidents from the log that we thought were skewed. The city of Woodhaven had 12,000 crime prevention incidents listed in there, where some other communities maybe had 300 or 400. And so what we did is we found those skewed incident categories and we removed them from there to come up with a final percentage of the total operating costs. This projects in overtime, it projects in a little bit of rent for Brownstown, some help with the utilities, but primarily, as you can see, Brownstown's going to still have a significant amount of cost sharing with this model. So, Bob, I'll turn it over to you before we get into the questions. You can clean up anything I missed or forgot.
No, you did a great job. You know, I just want to say also,
Can you use
yeah.
the microphone?
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay.
There's people watching on television.
Oh, okay.
They wouldn't be able to hear you otherwise.
All right. I just want to say also that I know each of your dispatchers, and they are fantastic people. I've seen them work. They are completely capable of doing this job. What we're trying to do is get them some additional help if we can get there, right? These are decisions that are tough to make. These folks have longevity in their jobs. They're concerned about their futures, of course. You know, who wouldn't be? But I can tell you now that in a consolidation, they're going to have additional help. They're not going to be there alone when something bad happens. If you get a tornado come through or, you know, heaven forbid, an active shooter situation, these folks are just going to be overwhelmed in a single seat situation, you know. So our goal is to try to make it a better situation for everyone, right? And, you know, maybe today you decide that, you know, this isn't for you right now. You know, we're always going to be there for you, you know, in the future. If something should happen and you decide, okay, it's a better time to go in 2 years or a year from now, then you'll be welcome to come. The real issue with that is as we develop the procedures and policies, anybody that's sitting at the table today will have a voice, right? If you come later, everything's going to be established. So, you know, it would be more difficult to, you know, if you had a unique situation that you wanted to address, you know. But I can tell you that, again, these folks are wonderful people. We're not here to, you know, take their jobs away from them.
One last thing, it's something that just came to me. One of the concerns that Bob had originally, and I meant to bring this up in my opening and it kind of drifted off, but in 2018 there were 2 attempts by the state of Michigan to force consolidation on communities, and what that legislation looked like was basically, I think at the first level was 100,000 population, and then by 1 or 2 years later it was going to be 150,000 population. And the state has passed twice, they've introduced bills to force consolidation that you couldn't have a PSAP. They hold the purse strings because they control that 911 funding, that 911 money that comes in. And, you know, we could lose that if we didn't meet that level of staffing. Now, luckily, in 2018, there were enough of us single-seat PSAPs or small communities that pushed back on that, but since that time, we're the last on the horizon here. Downriver is like the last place almost in the state and in most of the United States that still operates with single-seat PSAPs. I've been to Lansing to talk to the entire 911 board, and the board is made up entirely of county-wide PSAP centers. If you go to any county that takes in 911 funding, besides Wayne County, you're most likely going to find one dispatch center that dispatches for the whole county. And in some cases, multiple counties, like up in Mecosta, Osceola. They do 2 counties up there out of one center. So that's the world that they look at. Those are the people that make the decisions and talk to the legislature about what we're doing. We never want to be behind that. We want to try to stay ahead of it. And that was one of the other issues that came up, is that, you know, none of us individually could meet that 150,000 population threshold. We barely come close to that with all of us in South Downriver. We would have to bring the whole Downriver group together to get to that point. So, you know, it's always better to build something before you need it, and that's what we're trying to do. So,
Technology-wise, you're already 3/4 of the way there. Everybody downriver, with the exception of 2 agencies, are on the same CAD platform. We're on the same radio platform, and we're on the same 911 platform. So half of that technology work is done. So the transition into a consolidation is not going to be technology-wise a difficult challenge. It's working out these other issues.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Thank you, Bob. And I think now, well, see if the board has any questions, and then we'll open it up to the public.
Joe, do you mind if I go first?
Oh, no, please.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I do have a couple of questions for you, and I think I just want to get them out before I forget them.
Sure.
So, I'm an office manager in a small medical clinic over at Beaumont South Shore, Corwell. And, we were approached by Miosha. They're they have a grant-funded training for medical facilities, small businesses, et cetera, to prepare and create plans for active shooter events in, say, your facility. And so, in fact, they're having a implementation session tomorrow in Livonia. So I appreciate, like you said, this is not something any of us ever thought of before, but you get enough disgruntled people coming down your hallways or whatever looking for, their pound of flesh, you start to think twice about things. So I understand where this is coming from. But my question, at one of these sessions, there was a gentleman from Canton, and we talked about this briefly, and he raised a question that he thought I might ask. And again, I have no technical expertise. I think you are, you know what your current technologies are capable of doing, much better than I would. But we just got through a pandemic where we all learned how to use Zoom. We have a court system that is now doing a lot of work virtually, where they're bringing a whole courtroom together virtually. So one of these things that the person sitting next to me, I don't even know his name, suggested is when they did this study, did the group Mission Critical Partners even consider the possibility of, say, maintaining the dispatcher as a single seat in their location, but connecting them all virtually through a software system, so that they are consolidated electronically or virtually, but they still maintain an individual presence in their home community.
I think it's easy to visualize that in a meeting setting, right?
Yes?
But we have 911 lines that have to go to a certain location.
Okay.
So the 911 calls have to go someplace where they're going to get answered. And I can't imagine how we would manage that across 8 communities downriver where it rings. Maybe it's ringing in mine, but the beauty of a consolidated center is you can roll your chair over, or the person sitting next to you sees your phone ringing and can say, you know what, I'm going to jump on that line and get that one.
It prevents a logistical nightmare, is what you're telling me.
Right.
Okay. So that's good to know. This is also good for, because we do have a lot of tech-savvy people in the community who might be asking us the same question. Nice to know that there are answers, that it's been considered, et cetera. I'm also very cynical sometimes, and I'm curious. You say Mission Critical Partners has done this all over the country. Do they have a stake in this at all, in communities going toward consolidation, or are they truly independent and outside?
We paid them their fee. They still keep in touch with us, but we're done with their, they want to know how we're doing. But no, they don't really, they're not part of the build, and they're not part of, they gave us the groundwork, and they said, this is why you should do it, and we've been running on that from that point in
They don't get
time.
a stipend or anything if it's successful.
Okay. So they really did just do the research for you and presented the findings, and then from there on, we move forward as the Downriver Mutual Aid. And I just have one more question. Obviously, I'm the township clerk here. My deputy clerk is here. We would be running one of those elections. But I was pleased when you said that, and then it's in your packet too, that that the surcharge increase would be up to the voters. It would be a voter generated question that they would be able to find the answer, that they would answer to.
Correct.
So if we were hoping for that, then the entire system would have to work toward it. It wouldn't just be a done deal.
Correct. The
So-
42 cents is mandated by the state, and that's where Wayne County left it. We have to collect 42 cents. Almost every other community that has a PSAP or collecting funds have gone for some type of a surcharge increase. That's at the local level. The law allowed us to do that. It's much like a local millage, but in this case, it would be for the DMA area or the county, should the county choose to sign on
Well,
with this.
because it's essentially pushing the cost onto the consumer, it's very good that the consumer has the opportunity to voice their view on it.
Correct.
So, okay, well, you've answered my questions. I also wanted to say, just for the record, Supervisor Budney could not be here today for personal reasons. The same with our trustees, Kyle DeBose and Jamison Yeager. They wanted to be here, but their schedules just did not allow for that today. And I just want the record to show that they will catch up with us either online or, but they are also very interested in hearing what you have to say.
We're here to answer any questions beyond today. This isn't all you get, so my door is always open. If I could go back to one point you made about the virtual Zoom thing. So it doesn't really work to help us out in a PSAP, but with some of those ancillary duties back in the 90s, I brought, Joe would tell you, I used to bring prisoners over here to Grosse Ile because we didn't have a jail. And then I'd have to come and get them in the morning and take them back over to 33rd. And then once they get arraigned, I'd drive them back, and I'd spend my whole day shuttling back and forth between the island and 33rd, bringing prisoners back and forth. We do now have, thanks to the pandemic, right, we do most of our court hearings via Zoom now, including arraignments. So you can have a person in another jail, right? So you can have a person in one jail, a detective in their local department, and the judge, and you hold a virtual meeting and hold a virtual arraignment. So those things help us with some of those ancillary duties that we're talking about. So whether you maintain a jail, should you join is up to you. But I know that the city of Trenton is 100% on board with this. They plan on keeping their jail going. And, part of the reason that some of the other communities are maybe looking to Trenton or Flat Rock's keeping a jail going is that we know that now we don't have to physically get that person from point A to point B.
So what you're basically saying too is that if, again, because Grosse Ile, for all intents and purposes, we are small and our jail is small and it's manageable by the people and the staff that we have. Again, no judgment there, but if the system went toward consolidation, we would have some options as a township to look at whether or not it made sense for us to keep our jail
Sure.
or to share with somebody else's. And I'm not advocating one or the other, simply
Right.
stating that there are then options. We're not backed into a corner.
I'm keeping mine open. I think it's important for us. We're going to keep our jail open. Like I said, I had some tough reorganizing to do, but I made it happen. And we don't have prisoners like we used to. 2 years ago, the state legislature basically came down on us and said, misdemeanor arrests outside of serious ones, we want you to handle it with an appearance ticket. So typically we arrest them, maybe we bring them in and book them in, but when we're done, we have to write that ticket and kick them out the door. So we don't have, our population in our jail has gone way down. We currently have domestic violence and drunk driving offenders and those felonies that we get here and there. But the misdemeanor population that we used to have it's not there anymore.
Well, I'm going to step back and let my colleagues.
I'm going to ask a quick question, kind of a follow-up to Ote's. Does the state have a hammer in this game? How big is their hammer, and how big is it going to be in a couple of years?
As I see it, their hammer is that 911 funding, right? So what Bob uses to manage our radio system comes from the state. They send it down to him, And that's how they typically control local issues, right? They hold the purse strings. So should there be legislation again introduced to force consolidation? We now have, there are things in place and mandates that we have that deal with active shooters, right? Active shooter training is mandatory by the state. You have to have your plans and your training and everything is set in place. At some point, if the state decides that we see the need for, to force these remaining single seats into one, they hold the purse strings. So that's, as I see it, that's the hammer right now. Because none of us could afford on our own to manage this 911 radio system. Bob does a tremendous job with that, but, when he tells me what it costs to maintain that, it's significant, so.
You set? Okay. Gentlemen, thank you first off for coming tonight, and I know both the gentlemen very well. I've worked with them, and they are straight up as can be, so I just want to say it was a good presentation. There was a couple of questions, thank you, that you've already answered from this, but one of the questions, and I did some research on it, and we really didn't have a handle on it from within, to see how, and if this isn't what you handle, because I know you said you have issues in your own department that we're responsible for, not you, but it has to do with you at your dispatch. So guide me if you're not able to answer this. When I was the chief, I put in, and Eric would probably be able to give me better numbers, I put in 8 cameras in public areas, okay? I've got 2 license plate readers I put on, 1 on each bridge. And now we have the ability to go in the schools during a real-time issue on their security system. So what we have is, that's just Grosse Seal. So I'm assuming maybe, Gibraltar, Rockwood, Woodhaven, whatever, even Brownstown, that you have cameras, I guess I better say, and maybe something else. I doubt anybody else has an LPR that's stationary. You may have them in your cars. So from Grosse Seal to this centralized dispatch, I could not find that it actually could run. Now, I know they can be pulled up on cell phones. They can be pulled up on screens. The technology is really good today. Have you looked into this? Where is everybody else? Because we're not going to have a person possibly at the desk if this goes to fruition. All this technology, can it be transferred, if you even know, to your dispatch? Since, I'm looking at 8, 9, 10, and the security cameras at the school, if there's an issue. Are you familiar, or did you look into, can everybody's in the surrounding community be transferred somehow to your dispatch?
I can answer because we have 3 school districts in Brownstown. That's one of the unique things about Brownstown, right, is that we border every community that we're talking about tonight. And, we have the Gibraltar School District and the Woodhaven School District. And we have 1 laptop in our dispatch center that feeds into the camera system. I believe it's the same camera system that we have, and that's cloud-based. So one thing that we originally did with the school is we said that I don't have the staff, and we want those cameras. We want to be able to have them, but I can't expect my dispatchers to sit there and watch those cameras and try to find a fight going on in a hallway somewhere. We have SROs in our schools, and we have the ability to go to those cameras because they're cloud-based, but we also have the ability, and what we see the real value to that is that I can grab that laptop and send it out to a command post at a school, and now the commanders on the scene can have that and see what's going on in that school. Because as you know, with the 911 system is going to become overloaded, and I don't care how many we put into a dispatch center, they're going to have their hands full. I give this example usually, this Telegraph Road, and I know you don't have a Telegraph Road in Grosse Ile, but you have intersections and you have traffic crashes. And this is just a typical crash on Telegraph Road in Brownstown. It goes something like this. We have a crash, and this is an actual example. We're Piper's Restaurant. Really good pot roast on Monday nights, by the way. But Piper's Restaurant, we have a crash on Telegraph Road. The crash is a serious crash. There's a fatality, and there's a trapped individual in one of the cars. My one dispatcher in there answers the barrage of 911 calls because we talked about it. Everybody has a cell phone now, and everybody that drives past that crash scene assumes that I'm the first one that saw it, and I'm going to do the right thing, and I'm going to call 911. So what happens then is that our 911 bank gets overloaded, and those calls get sent to Woodhaven. And in Woodhaven, they're not listening to what's going on in Brownstown, so they get on the radio and they say, hey, Brownstown, are you aware there's a crash in front of Piper's? And yep, we're aware of it because we've been answering all these other 911 calls. So then the fire gets there, fire needs help. They are trying to coordinate the extrication of that one person. And then guess what? Someone makes the decision that I need a helicopter. All right, we're going to call a helicopter. That one dispatcher is managing that helicopter. They're on the phone with U of M. They get the helicopter coming in. They manage through this. They got it all done. So then where are we going to land the helicopter? We got to have a safe place to land it. There's this beautiful football field over here right across from Piper's Restaurant. It's the Woodhaven High School football field. So now you got a helicopter, life flight, lands on the football field, and every kid in the high school's got one of these. They start posting on social media. They start calling 911. They start calling mom and dad at home. And guess what happens in our dispatch center? We get another barrage of 911 calls coming in. So having that feed in there is one thing. Managing the data that comes in is another. One of the things that we now have, used to be you called, you drove past that crash scene, you went to a payphone, or you drove home and you made a call. And by that time, someone was already on scene. But now we have cell phones. Everybody has a cell phone. Now we have text to 911. So now our dispatchers not only have to manage the phone call, but they have to manage the text coming in because someone may not, for some reason, young people these days don't want to pick up the phone and talk. They want to send a text. So now they get text messages coming in. And the next level is going to be live feed, and the technology keeps growing, and it's great to have this information going out to the road. But the next thing is going to be live feed video, like Facebook Live, right? So you roll up on a scene, and somebody can say, here's what I'm seeing, and they hit it on their camera, and it feeds right into dispatch. Well, someone has to process that information and deal with it once they get in there. Otherwise, it's just sitting on a camera for someone to see. So is the technology there to get? Sure it is. It's all cloud-based now. Could we promise you that someone's eyes are going to be on that camera all the time? I can't promise that to you. And I couldn't promise my own school district that. It's there if we need it. Should we get an incident in there, we can search the cameras and move it around. But I can't promise that we're going to look at the cameras from all
Have any of the other cities been concerned with their camera issues or their technology issues going from their department to your dispatch center? Am I the only one?
Come to you, Bob?
Woodhaven has mentioned the same thing you're talking about, Joe. And in my mind, I think it's possible to set up some large screens within the dispatch center for the purpose of an emergency situation, right? You might not be able to monitor them 24/7, but if you have a problem at the Woodhaven High School, you should be able to access that bank of cameras specifically in the dispatch center. I don't see it as a far reach, to be honest with you. I think it's possible.
But the other issues probably not, like the LPR. We get hits on it, and when we set it up, when I got it, because of the township board, it was more of, let's just call it on a layman's term, more of the serious issues and not the misdemeanors. So it's not going off a lot, but it does go off for Amber Alerts, stolen cars, whatever.
We're looking at LPRs across downriver. In fact, there was a mutual aid grant that was received for that, and I know Brownstown's looking at it. I believe we're looking at a different system than what you're looking at.
Yeah.
But I know that the system we're looking at, you can set it up that the alert comes to the individual officer's cell phone in the car. So that information can get fed out to the community. And it could be sent to the central dispatch center as well, especially if there's a serious situation and you're looking for a wanted vehicle that could cause harm when they get there. Definitely the technology's there to read that and get those alerts to go wherever you want them to go.
All right, thank you. I'm good.
I just want to ask Bob, next time you do, would you use the microphone as well? Because I think, I'm worried
Okay.
that people watching or streaming will not be able to hear
I
you.
understand, yeah.
Number one, with respect to calling, if you could walk everybody here and at home what the procedure is. We have a phone call for assistance, medical assistance on a net at the north end of the island. Somebody calls up and it goes to central dispatch. Explain to everybody here and at home how that call then translates into boots on your sidewalk and people giving life support, rendering medical assistance in the home, and then on the way to Wyandotte or Brownstown, Seaway, whatever the flavor is today.
Yeah, so when a 911 call comes in, it comes in on a specific line. They used to call them trunks. Now it's all fiber backbone, right? And it goes to where we ask them to send it. So a carrier like AT&T will say, all right, I have a tower located within Grosse Ile. Here are the sectors of that tower. Where do you want me to send the 911 calls from that tower? So those come to me. I evaluate them. Sometimes there's overlap, where a tower might go into a couple different communities. So it's a judgment call, right? So let's say we send that call to Grosse Ile from one of those towers. If Grosse Ile doesn't answer that phone call within a certain amount of time, it goes to another center. It's 22 seconds.
Let me back you up there. Who does the call go to on Grosse Ile? Is it going to be to our fire chief, to our police chief?
A 911 call, it goes right to the dispatch center. And there's a console there that receives all those 911 calls
Right?
specific to that dispatcher. And in a consolidation effort, what we do is we tell our carrier, Peninsula Fiber, hey, we want all of these calls for Grosse Ile routed to this dispatch center. So we can send them anywhere we want. Again, it's all about technology, right? So that's how that would happen. Now, the dispatcher will answer the phone. If it's an EMD call, they'll start that procedure. If it's, there's also attached to all this technology is a brand new GIS mapping system that we invested a lot of money into because everything runs off maps nowadays. So we have a map that can isolate any of these callers within 15 yards, which is pretty good deal, right? Pretty close. That's far better than we used to have years ago. Sometimes you'd have 1,500 meters from a cell tower. Finding somebody that called 911 was almost impossible. So let's say you have a brand new dispatcher at the dispatch center. They don't know Grosse Ile very well yet, right? They've only been there a short time. That map is going to be their number one assistance, right? They're going to take the call. The call is going to pop up on the map. They're going to see where that caller is. As it updates, it's going to get that circle of confidence is going to get closer and closer to that caller, and they can start sending people to that call immediately. So
So the dispatcher is going to be able to look on the map and see what the approximate address is if for some reason the caller can't provide that.
that's correct, yeah.
Okay, let me take it to the next level. 40% of Grosse Ile is wet. River, Trenton Channel. We get a call for service, and we've had those. You get a call for service that says, just saw a boat explode, just saw a boat flip. How does the dispatcher know who to send and where under those circumstances?
I can maybe help with that because we have 8 square miles of Lake Erie as well. We also have Point Mooley State Game Area. And if, for those waterfowlers in the room, you know that that's a very popular place to launch a boat. And we typically get the capsized boat that's overloaded with decoys and guns and people. And the call usually comes in something like this. My boat capsized. I launched at Point Mooley. I swam and found a rock. I'm sitting on a rock. And it's foggy and I don't know where I'm at. And our dispatchers, in a matter of seconds, because of that GPS location, pull it up on what we have, what's the system called on, Jeff? What's your map system? Active 911 or?
Oh, yeah, it's a Rapid SOS.
Rapid SOS. It pinpoints the position on a map, and it's never in Brownstown because most of the game area is in Monroe County. But our dispatchers have resources going to that location from Monroe County, the Coast Guard. We're familiar with water because we have 8 square miles of Lake Erie, and like I said, we probably have the least qualified boaters launching every October, trying to get out there to, in a small rickety duck boat or a kayak or a, so the technology's there to pinpoint that location. We've been asked, well, will you know where, like in the case of Gibraltar, well, what if we say we're at the Horse Island Bridge? Well, we can put in our GIS map, we can put common names in there, right? So if dispatcher just enters in, let's say, for instance, Kroger's, we get a list of Kroger's, right? One on Gibraltar Road, one on West Road, and we'll get any of the downriver other Kroger's that might be there. So if a dispatcher just types in Horse Island Bridge, boom, it pinpoints on the map. So the technology's there to, we just have to feed it the right way. Groseal tells us what you want to call these common locations that aren't addresses, and we can, we'll get resources there.
How does the dispatcher know what community to contact for assistance? When we have an issue here on Groseal, our dispatchers can work with the fire department for a boater and pinpoint the location, and they call our chief of fire and say, we've got a problem, and he knows to roll the equipment out and the personnel to do that. A dispatcher in Brownstown has to make a decision as to where the equipment is. You gentlemen had indicated earlier that getting equipment and people to the site isn't the problem anymore. It's about being able to dispatch. How does that dispatcher know what community to activate for the equipment for rescue? Is that part of Downriver Mutual Aid, or how do you handle that?
We would utilize the same equipment and people that you would in a water rescue, because we have, the dive team. I know, Todd Brozak is one of the commanders on the dive team, and that's part of Downriver Mutual Aid. So if we have an incident on the water, we know we're calling them, and we call them all the time. If we have somebody in a pond and need the dive team, we know where to go to get those resources. So that's, I guess, the beauty of the DMA system and working together collectively to do this. We don't have our individual SWAT teams. We don't have we have a crash team that investigates serious crashes all throughout the Downriver community. We now have a major crimes task force that provides resources from all the communities to help in those areas. So we're used to dealing with our downriver partners and our downriver communities, and I see it as, maybe because you can't drive from one part of Brownstown to another without going through a whole bunch of other downriver communities. I see downriver as my community as much as I do Brownstown. So I think our dispatchers see that. And to backtrack, the process when a 911 call comes in, one of the nice parts about a consolidated dispatch center is that you have duties that are divided up amongst the staff that's in there. You'll have a call taker, you'll have a fire dispatcher, and you'll have a police dispatcher. And do they cross lines all the time? Yeah, well, when the phones are ringing, if the fire dispatcher's not busy, they might pick up a line and enter it in there. But it's that dividing the duties and working together that provides the efficiencies in a situation like this. So in that case, when the 911 call be answered by somebody, if it was an EMD call, someone is working on CPR, the call gets entered into the computer and it pops up on the fire dispatcher screen, and fire says, okay, I'm going to get these resources going to help out there. If it's police and fire related, then the police dispatcher is also sending resources there. So that's how you get the efficiencies in all these other counties. Monroe County sends every fire and police agency in the county. Will there be bumps in the road? Will there be learning curves? Absolutely. But if we're going to get there, we have to start somewhere.
One of the concerns that I have, and I think other people are going to have as well, is the delay that is created by going from a 911 call right now. These dispatchers in the front row can pick up the phone and know immediately where to dispatch to. And there's a tone that goes out to the fire chief, or a tone that goes out to the fire department, and a tone that goes out to the police department over the radio. A little bit difference in communication, but it's the same thing. There is a tremendous amount of confidence in this community because the gentlemen have a goal set. The two gentlemen have a goal set of response within 3 minutes, as much as possible. My concern is somebody has a car accident or anything else that requires 911 service, somebody knocking down your front door, a domestic violence, whatever we want to do. I know right now that we're going to have people responding within typically 3 or 4 minutes. John, am I wrong about that? You're right. Am I going to have the same kind of response with the central dispatch? And I'm not trying to put you gentlemen on, but that's a legitimate question that we all have to look at.
All the same resources would exist in a centralized dispatch that they exist in a single seat PSAT. So if there's a tone, as a matter of fact, we just purchased new pagers for all of the volunteer fire departments because we want that to be consistent notification for all of those folks. So the same technology will sit at any location that we decide to do a consolidation as it does here. So that same call comes in, those same resources are there for the dispatcher, they press the tone, they get immediate response, just like they do today.
And if you have a police emergency, you're going to be able to do the same thing so that the officers that are on duty are going to be able to get a call right to their radio, just as we're doing right now. And it's not going to go to Trenton or Wyandotte or anything else. It's going to go to Groseal.
We'll know where the call came from. It's going to pop up on the screen, and the dispatchers will send those Groseal resources. Delays in response time typically come from not on the dispatch side, because I can tell you I ran the numbers on my department, and I could run them all DMA if I wanted to. But you know, the time from getting the call to sending out, getting the call to the cars is generally within a minute. Right. The delay in response time comes from the community staffing levels and how quick I can get that car from where they're at to where they need to be. And I can tell you our response times in 23 square miles of Brownstown spread over 3 locations. Ours are around 4 minutes. So we're not too far behind that 3-minute mark, and we all strive for response times. But the delay typically isn't caused from the dispatchers get the call taker enters it right in the computer, and it can be, when you assign a car, it pops up in the car's computer that they know that there's a call there, but then immediately they go over the air and send that car and to the fire department. The fire department's using, ours is, our fire chief's here, he can talk about it, but, I heard your little beep in the back there, but he's got his tablet, so all those little beeps that you may have heard, that's a call coming out over there, so he knows right where it's going. So the technology is wonderful. It works. I don't predict that there would be any deficit in response time from joining a consolidated dispatch center.
Well, it certainly seems like by having multi-seats there that you can handle a larger volume of calls, because when you have an accident or anything on Groseal, we have a lot of people flooding dispatch wanting to know what's going on. And I can see the benefit to that. I'm concerned about that. One other concern that I have 2 ladies here in the front row. One is 4 years shy of being able to retire. I think we've had 20 great years of service. 22. She is close to retiring, but doesn't have the total number of years in service to be able to do that. I have another dispatcher that started out when she was 18 or 19 and still has about 7 years, if I'm correct, before she can retire. She's got the time. She doesn't have the age, which is a great thing. I want to know what we can do about preserving and protecting their jobs as well as the other ladies that have not been here as long. What are we looking at if we get in on the ground floor? Do they have a better chance of being hired as dispatchers versus waiting a year or 2 years or anything like that? What can we do for the ladies that have given us 2 decades of service? I'm concerned about that.
Well, I would be concerned as well, and if the tables were turned, I have dispatchers in that same situation. I happen to be the one that said, you know what, I'll take on this task, and because I have, I'll say this, Brownstown and Grosse Ile probably have some of the best downriver, or best dispatchers in probably southeast Michigan, if not the whole state. And I do respect, and, we call the thin blue line for police, the thin red line for fire. Theirs is a thin gold line, and they deserve that. They are the true first responders in any emergency. But we're getting into that territory where, once again, that's a local issue for Grosse Ile. And, I certainly, we're trying to staff this for all the communities. I have projected that we'll need 14 full-time dispatchers. We value experience, and, I believe that, between the two communities, I would see, and I think Bob has better understanding, he works closer with them than I do, but when we started talking about this, we said, where's our future leadership going to come for this PSAP, right? For this bigger project when we bring all of downriver together. And the one thing that none of us can offer our dispatchers in 22 years of service is awesome. I've already admitted I wouldn't have lasted 2 years, let alone 22. I just can't manage that situation. It takes a very special person to do that. But one of the things that we can't offer in a single seat or any of our communities is anything beyond the dispatcher position, right? In a consolidated, when Mission Critical wrote their study up, they had a PSAP director, an assistant PSAP director. They had quality control people. They had training staff, supervisors, right? We're looking at adding dispatcher supervisors right now for this consolidation. But you might be looking at your future leadership for this big consolidation, and we would be foolish not to appreciate the experience that they have. 22 years is amazing. I've got Teresa Dalka, who has been, I think, right around that time at Brownstown. I don't know how she does it. She comes in every day, and she doesn't get a lunch break. She won't take a lunch break. She sits there for 12 hours a day, and I don't know how they manage it, but I do value that. I also have a union in my building, and we've negotiated with ours what it looks like. I'll say this, if they were to decide they want to apply, we have a testing process, but I think it would be no problem for them to get through that. We do value experience, and anybody there could basically pick up their seat and move to the other building and would just pick up where they left off because they're used to the system. But I wish I could offer seniority or something beyond that. We do offer lateral pay up to 4 years. All of them will qualify for our top pay rate when we get there. We have a MERS pension. So MERS makes it, because we share a pension system, they could probably bring that over and continue with Brownstown until their retirement date. What I can't promise you is, extra seniority. The sooner someone comes on, obviously, with the 14 that we're looking at with staffing, and that 14 is assuming all 8 communities join. It would be scaled back from there, but we do value their service, and I would be foolish not to take a good hard look at any one of your staff here, because I know what they do, and if they're doing it full-time, they're good at it.
3 last questions, I promise.
Sure.
What is the rate of pay that they would be going into? Are you able to disclose that?
Bob, remember when you did all the numbers for me?
I don't remember. Brand new is 1806 an hour, but they would come in at the top rate. I just don't remember off the top of my head what that is.
$25, $26 an hour, somewhere around there. It's competitive. We've compared it. When Mission Critical did the study, one of the things I told Bob, I said, I'm on board to help you, but not if we're going to do this on the cheap, because they deserve better than being on the cheap, and Mission Critical looked at Brownstown's pay, and they looked at Groseal's pay, and I think it was a toss-up, and they went with Brownstown's pay and wages when they did the study as far as best-in-class benefits, so,
Second question, if I may then. You've indicated that you have, in most of the communities, if not all of them, have a labor agreement. Under some circumstances, you may not be able to outsource services like a dispatch. Is there a preference within the labor agreement that Brownstown has, and will that labor agreement control dispatch? So that if you have, I'm just going to throw a number out here, Chief. If you have 4 dispatchers or 5 dispatchers, are they first in under the labor agreement? Or what is the method? I understand testing, and I also understand most senior qualified person and most qualified senior person and all the language that's gone with that. The contract that's going to be used, is it going to be the Groseal contract for a former Groseal dispatcher? Is it going to be the Brownstown contract for every person manning that dispatch?
it would be the Brownstown contract, and like I said, we have adjusted our lateral pay. We pay up to 4 years, which is our top pay. So they come in basically at top rate. We've provided vacation time during their first year before they're off probation, which is something that, I had to work to do that. We're all struggling for staffing, right? We're all competing over the same pool of applicants. But no, they would come in, and my staff that's there, they were already under a contract. They'll maintain their seniority. They'll maintain their leave time. The pay will be the same because, assuming, I don't know the years of service of all your staff, but if it's up to the top rate, then that's where they would come in at ours. Beyond that, we haven't negotiated any kind of a transfer or a lateral beyond the pay raise.
So if you go with 14 dispatchers, just as a number, and Brownstown has 6, then effectively every other dispatcher that applies, whether it's 5 from Groseal or 5 from Riverview, they're all competing for those remaining seats. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Last question. We're all familiar with the merger between Melvindale and Dearborn for some of their services, and you've indicated how we are dinosaurs essentially for what's left over, but you also indicated there were speed bumps. And I understand every merger and consolidation has things that pop up that maybe were not foreseeable. What are some of the speed bumps that you're aware of that happened with Melvindale, Dearborn consolidating, and some of the other departments within Michigan or within Wayne County where they've had speed bumps? What are the speed bumps?
I'm most familiar with the upper downriver consolidation and what we call Downriver Central Dispatch out of Wyandotte. And we've had a lot of discussions with Downriver Central Dispatch about what worked for them and what didn't work for them. And if I could boil it out to, this is in a nutshell, the trade-off, right? And when I say bumps in the road is the just learning curve and what we do and what we don't know. A community like Groseal is much, not land-wise, but calls for service-wise. Thankfully, you have a very safe community here, and you don't generate the number of calls for service that I do in Brownstown. I'm 23 square miles. I don't remember the square mileage on Groseal, but we're much larger. Our population is much larger. So in a consolidated dispatch center, if you've got a resident that's used to calling and saying, hey, this is Joe on 2nd Street, and your dispatcher knows that Joe is having this certain problem that he has every week, then you're going to lose that. You're going to lose that personal service, right? The trade-off on that is, God forbid, you have a critical incident, and I don't think any of us are immune from that right now. We can, now we have Nashville as an example. We have MSU. The trade-off for that is we're much better prepared to deal with those things. And I hate it that we're there. I really do. I wish I could say, you guys have a good thing going, and I've already said, you guys have great staff, and they provide, the day-to-day operation is wonderful. You know, Gibraltar's the other community that hasn't committed yet. You know, they're still on the fence. But they're very similar to Groseal with their small community. And when someone calls up and says, you know, this is Joe, here's my problem, the officer doesn't even have to ask for or the dispatcher doesn't even have to ask for the address, because you know that on a personal level, a personal service. So that's not possible in a, 8 community consolidated PSAP, but we would be much better prepared for any kind of major critical incident. So those are the bumps in the road that I'm talking about. Officers probably aren't going to be 100% happy with it, right? Mine won't be, because our dispatchers work out of our police building. Our police officers are the one bringing them coffee and bringing them lunch and giving them a break and let them stretch their legs, right? In turn, our dispatchers provide a great service to our officers when they need lean work ran for a domestic report or a criminal history. I know our dispatchers, when an officer comes in, boom, there's a stack of paperwork. They can run right in and do their report. I can't provide that level to your officers. What you get in return is that you get a dedicated, when they're on a scene and when they're dealing with something in a critical incident or a serious incident, they've got a dispatcher sitting in front of that police computer managing the calls to and from the police radio. That's their only responsibility. They don't have to worry about the front desk or the 911 calls or what does fire need on the scene. That's the plus side to that. So the bumps in the road are generally change. None of us like change. I don't like change. But, to get from point A to point B, I'm in the end of my career, right? I've got a couple more years and I'll be joining the ranks of the retired people like Joe there. But this was important to me because as one of the chiefs of Brownstown and my leadership with the Downriver Mutual Aid, I'm trying to make it better for the future of all of Downriver. And, Bob brought this problem to me and I'm here to try to come up with a solution. And I'll say it again, I'm not here to sell Groseal on the idea. I'm here to tell you why it was important to me and why I'm bringing this here to you. So,
Chief, you hit something that sparked a concern for me. We have all of our dispatchers in here, all of our officers and our management can probably individually name a dozen people that are frequent flyers. Groseal at 10.4 square miles has the oldest per capita population in the area. We have people that will be making phone calls, not every day, but from the same facility, and I'm looking at Macomb Street, you're going to get a call on average sometimes 1 a day, and it might be about picking up somebody's father and putting them back in bed. It might be perhaps administering some kind of a Narcan or something that's life-saving from one extreme to the other. But the frequent flyers, as I would refer to them, that are just needing some assistance to get back on track for the day, are they going to be shut out of this program because the dispatcher says we don't do that kind of stuff anymore?
Absolutely not. And that's why, we provide the same service. We call it, lift assist, right? And our fire goes on that. Probably when that elderly population can't manage at home, they probably come to we have several senior facilities within our borders. Right behind our station is an assisted living community or a retirement community there. So we provide that level of service, and we plan on whatever Groseal tells us they want to provide to their community, then we're going to honor that. And even in a consolidated PSAP center, we want to provide a level of service to our community. None of us are too busy to handle those things. Grozeal will tell us what they're gonna what they want us to send a car on. It's real easy for our dispatchers, right? We don't ask them to be, we don't ask them to vet a call. If you tell us when someone calls for a lift assist, we want you to send police and fire, then that's what we're gonna do. They're gonna just pick it up and send that resource there to do it.
Candidly, it just scares me that once we make a decision on this, if we decide to go with the blended system, if we can use that, to central dispatch, there's really no going back from a financial standpoint or a personnel standpoint. We have to hire all new, train them, and that's a huge commitment. And on the other hand, if we don't, and you have an incident, it's a weighing. What do you do? And that worries me.
Yeah.
It worries me about these people,
Sure.
and it worries me about the other 10,700 in the community.
I understand completely. You know, those are, we've been talking a lot about trade-offs, and it's, we can tell you where we've seen it happen. It has worked. Like I said, I'm not going to lie to you and tell you it's going to be perfect. We have those bumps in the roads, but we learn from that and move on from that. And a lot of it is technology, right? We've seen attempts at this that have failed in the past. The technology has grown so much as far as with GPS and being able to pinpoint a location. But all of us want to provide the best level of service that we can to our communities. And, Grozeal will tell us what they want us to send a car for. And that's simply what we're going to do.
Chief, I just want to conclude by thanking you and Bob for putting together not just tonight, but also a program where I'm persuaded you've done a lot of research and a lot of work on this. I'm still anxious, but I appreciate the work that you've done because there is so much that's happened. I think you've probably been in law enforcement for 40 years?
Almost.
All right.
Getting there.
And to put something like that together for this day and age, regardless of your age, a lot of questions, a lot of answers. I just want to say thank you to both you gentlemen and the other chiefs that are here tonight, fire, and the backup, the support that you have. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
I have one follow-up question that kind of came out of what Carl said. I had gone in on this presentation with a certain assumption that you point out as phase 3, where ultimately this becomes a DCC DMA joint venture. And now I understand that initially the dispatchers will all be employees of Brownstown. So DMA is not taking them on to begin with. It's they're going to be asked to move to the Brownstown department. That's correct, right? So
You're talking about in the short term, what we're looking to do now?
yeah, well, the short term is,
Short
it
term
sounds
is-
like they're going to Brownstown, but you
Right.
said phase 3 ultimately is to have a downriver mutual aid PSAP.
That was the original. MERS can move from department to department.
But had you considered just starting straight out with a DCC DMA so that all, if communities go along with this, and again, I'm not saying that I'm for or against this, that we skip that step of having them work for Brownstown, that this just becomes a downriver mutual aid project of
That was
911?
that was in my attempt to try to move this down the road. And remember, I have union employees as well, and they had the same concerns that your dispatchers have about what's my future look like if I'm moving from one entity to the next, and a lot of them probably still have that, right? We talked about what they gain from that, and very likely future leadership roles in this new organization, and they were looking at upwards to run the whole thing at 50 to 55 employees operating out of this. So, but that all takes a long time, and my fear about how any of us in DMA would manage a crisis situation, a violent encounter anywhere. How would we do that with what I know we all expect of our dispatchers? I just knew that if I decided to take that on, and I had to get my township board on board with it, right? Because we are putting additional pressure on our HR department and our payroll department. But we all saw the positive side of that. And, I'll be honest, moving to that phase 3 is probably at the end of my career, if not after my career. But what I'm trying to do is fix this now as soon as I can. We hope to, by the end of the year, have any South Downriver community on board that wants to come. And like I said, I'm not, what we do is separate from what Groseal decides to do, and I think Bob explained it pretty well. We'd love to have you at the table to build this so that we can have, Groseal build the operating procedures with us. We can address issues like, what do we do on certain types of calls? Are we sending them on lift assists? That's the advantage of coming in early, but we'll welcome Groseal at any point in time when you decide to join. We're not going to close the door on you, and you're part of the Downriver Mutual Aid community. And if you get a crisis over here, we're all coming. I'll be here. I know our fire chief will be here, and Joe will tell you, Downriver has worked great together to pool our resources to make it work in this great Downriver community that we live in.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Now, I'd like to have the dispatchers first shot at the microphone. Comments, questions?
Eric's
Eric?
Just so you know, Dave.
Oh,
Hello, Eric Vasquez, Sergeant at the Groseal Police Department, also President of the Groseal Police Officers Association. My request for that, Mr. Nadeau, is that if I could make a statement on behalf of the union.
Go ahead.
If dispatchers feel that they want to make a comment afterwards, that's fine. We've
problem.
discussed that. But if I could make this comment, it's about 3.5 minutes long.
that's okay.
I tried to get it into 3 minutes, but I couldn't.
You need to raise the podium and all.
I'm sure going to need this raised.
On your right-hand side,
Right bottom.
Thank you. Yeah,
Bob's used to that.
I think that's fine. Thank you.
Eric, I'm
that fine?
going to sit down, but
Yep.
I'm here if you have any questions or want me to come back.
Yep, I have 2 questions afterwards, but let me tackle this first. Again, Eric Vasquez, Sergeant at the Groseal Police Department, as well as the Groseal Police Officers Association President. Regarding dispatch consolidation to the Groseal Township Board, Police Administration, there's not a phone tree at our department, unlike many agencies these days. Residents shouldn't have to guess and dial 0 to get assistance from a dispatcher. As it relates to Downriver Mutual Aid, Groseal PD is the hub for mutual aid notifications. This is only a small part of a larger scale of their responsibilities. Examples are a dispatcher being present and prepared for all incidents, whether on land or water, having a secure open facility for anyone's safety, monitoring and searching prisoners, quick access to school cameras, license plate recognition system, code red notifications, handling on-the-spot requests such as gun permits, registration, burn permits, NTA tickets, releasing of impound vehicles, FOIAs, lost and found items, vacation watch requests, registering sex offenders, questions or directions, people dropping off, picking up correspondence to from township employees at the fire and police department, monthly siren tests, CVS medical box, quick notification to township employees in the case of an emergency. Building security will be an issue. The building will be unoccupied and unmonitored for extended periods, leaving patrol vehicles, weapons, equipment, sensitive files, and fire apparatus unmonitored. As it stands now, dispatchers monitor all cameras for public safety building and surrounding properties to prevent any vandalism or fire prevention. The training room is used by various island organizations free of charge. That will end because we cannot have people in the building unmonitored, and we cannot commit an officer ahead of time. On multiple occasions, people have pulled into the parking lot or enter the building experiencing severe medical emergencies. They are greeted and monitored by a dispatcher who is calling for a patrol car and ambulance within seconds. The person experiencing the emergency is continually monitored by the dispatcher, who can perform life-saving measures like CPR if needed. To add, all of our dispatchers and officers are EMD certified. These additional responsibilities that dispatchers provide are what make Grosse Ile Police and Fire Department unique, giving it a small town feel. When you consider the township's overall budget, $36.8 million, the estimated 1.5% of the overall budget is not worth the decrease of your public safety service. Because the additional services that our dispatchers provide are not going to be covered by the consolidation, the service requests that island residents call about at times are not even entertained by other departments. The city of Riverview expressed this same concern and opted out of the Downriver North consolidation with Wyandotte in 2009. So, what's the worth in the end? Money? The dispatch consolidation can eliminate costs entirely if the surcharge is approved in 2024. But there is still a cost to maintain services described above. Whether hiring part-time help, the cost of housing prisoners, overtime for call-ins for transport on arrests, detectives arraigning subjects at a detention center, or negotiating a change in working conditions for current officers that could possibly absorb some of the dispatcher clerk responsibilities. The cost keeps increasing. I've made several requests to management to obtain a true dollar amount of savings, and no one and I haven't been provided an answer. So I pose the same question. What is the true savings of the Consolidation Dispatch Center, and is the cost of our current public safety standard worth jeopardizing? From what has been provided, the Grosse Ile Public Safety Dispatch, the union has not been shown the benefits and does not support the proposed dispatch consolidation. Thank you for allowing me to make this statement. I do have two questions first before the dispatchers, if they choose. Chief Watson, if Grosse Ile stays as a standalone PSAP, the dispatch the dispatch consolidation occurs in Brownstown, can Grosse Ile receive surcharge money to be allocated for our dispatch center from Wayne County?
So the dispatch money that comes in, currently the 42 cents, doesn't come to Brownstown or Grosse Ile, it goes to DMA. And that money is, the DCC is the fiduciary for those, that 911 funds, and we would expect that the funds will be brought into DMA with the increase in the surcharge and then distributed throughout the system. Brownstown, Grosse Ile, none of us control that radio system, and part of the issue was, collectively we bought into the 911 system and the radio system because none of us could afford it on our own. If we go for a surcharge, it's going to be, and speaking to those, we just went for a millage last year. What you promise your community is what you need to do with that funding. And if the surcharge language goes on the ballot and it's directed towards being brought into a consolidated environment, then that's what I would assume that DMA and DCC is going to do with that surcharge money to do it. If it's just broad and we're increasing it to $250, then then it would be shared amongst the entire group. But none of that comes in currently for staffing in any of our buildings. We don't get a Brownstown, and as far as I understand it, Grosse Ile, we don't get any staffing money. We don't get any money sent to us to cover the costs of our employees or health care or pensions. That's all coming from our own budgets. The 911 money comes in, and I'll let Bob take over for that.
Just quickly, Eric, the services you have today will never go away. Whether the surcharge increase occurs or not. If you decide to stay alone, we'll still support the technologies that you have today. Now, as far as extra dollars, I don't see that happening because those dollars are going to be used to support a consolidation, you know. But what you have today will never go away. We'll still support that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And then a second question. With power outages that often occur during storms in the downriver area, what if the downriver south consolidation loses power? Where do the 911 calls get rerouted? If this occurs now in Grosse Ile, you know, we're able to utilize the neighboring departments to transfer that switch. What happens when the south consolidation loses power? What's the plan?
Sure. Well, first off, we have a generator. We have a fairly new building. We have a backup generator, and we're set up as an emergency operations center. You know, we utilized it during COVID, but we have not lost power in our building since I've been there. When it goes off, switches to the generator, and we're on generator power. That's phase one. But phase two would be, we're building this as an 8-seat PSAP because we plan on backing up Downriver Central, and Downriver Central would be our backup in that case. They have extra seats available there. And Brownstown has been DCD's backup center, and we've had staff come from over there to sit at our open seat. We do have 2 seats, only one's occupied, so we have an open position there. But Bob is planning on building this there so that we are the backup center for DCD, and DCD would be the backup center then for Brownstown. In addition to that, we also have a plan in place for, none of us are, who knows what kind of natural disasters might come our way. We've seen it happen with hurricanes and flooding, and Midland had the dam break, and we've been in touch with a company that basically it's a 911 center in a box, and we can set it up anywhere we can find internet connection. That's available in our state. We plan on utilizing that because none of us know, you know, we live in the Midwest. We get ice storms and we get tornadoes once in a while, but we don't typically have hurricanes or earthquakes, but none of us really know what the future holds for us. So there is a plan in place for that. In Midland, it wiped out their entire 911 operations center, which is at Midland Police Department, but they were able to set up and get 911 service going. Now, could we offer CAD? That would be a different thing, but can we get a 911 call and radio service? Yeah, that's what they're planning to do. If something were to happen with both dispatch centers, then we would have that other option for 911. Let's hope we don't get to that point, right? Because things are really bad when we're that backed up.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, Jeff and Eric, I'm sorry. Can you stay up here a second, Eric? I want to make sure I'm correct on something because I did some research on this. And Jeff, please correct me if I'm wrong on this. I want to make sure, because of your question, Eric, to make sure it's answered correctly. If the vote or the verbiage goes through for the vote, and let's just say Grosse Ile doesn't go, and that was his question, it is venue specific. It will be venue specific to raise those rates. And if it's venue specific, then it's like by zip code. When I looked into this, it was stated that they can actually figure out who jumps in, who's in the consolidation, and those individuals would reap the benefits of that. And I think it might be like $1.50 more or something, whatever it is, but $1.50 or so more. But if Grosse Ile does not go in, then the same rate applies because it is venue specific to our cell phone, our landlines even get it. So the answer is positively no. We don't get anything from that increase from the vote if we don't go in.
Thank you.
But we don't lose what we've got.
No, they told me no. You don't lose what you have, but there is no increase.
Bob has no intentions in turning off the 911 and radio system. That's going to be here for you.
We know where you live.
Now, we do know that, you know, we got bad news from Motorola yesterday that we're going to be looking at another radio system in DMA. That's going to be expensive, and that's part of what motivated Bob to come to me and say he's concerned about the future. Bob's retired, but he's here because he cares about downriver, and Bob could have easily sailed off into the sunset and left us all here to figure it out, but Bob didn't do that. And besides, I have a GPS tether on his ankle in case he tries to leave me on this. But, yeah, I think you're correct, Joe. That's how I interpreted it.
Yeah, that's-
I'm not an attorney, but if we went through the millage, I know if you have language specific to a vote, then you better darn well use that money for what you said you were going to use it for.
Try again, if any of the dispatchers would like to come up and directly address. Question?
Oh, what? Good.
Good?
Yeah, no, I didn't, I thought she was
Okay.
next to say.
Chief Carmack, you want to come up and,
Let me just say this. My door's always open. My phone is, I'll be happy to, the chief has my cell phone number. If there are individual questions that come up from your dispatch staff or anybody in your department or with the board, I just ask you don't publish it to the community. But I'm always here to answer those questions and try to help you work through whatever you're working through. So, thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
somebody's in the back there.
I was going through your cost sharing. Yeah,
She's got to come to the microphone.
I've been playing with the numbers, and you're forecasting 11 million with the 42. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're forecasting 11 million with the 42 cents, correct?
Bob? Currently,
The 42 cents is per landline and regular cell phone, and it's per every for the whole downriver community. And you're saying you're gonna get $11 million.
No, that's not what we're saying.
Go to the microphone, please.
The $11 million was the number that it cost us to build the radio network that we currently have.
Okay.
That's what I was referring to. But right now, the budget that we receive annually is about $1.8 million total
On your
for the 42 cents.
Okay.
So all a DMA collects about $1.8 million. Out of that, we spend about $1.2 million just to maintain what we have.
okay.
All right.
All right. Now, my question is, I was looking at your cost sheet. It looks like gross seal would go up, in the 2 years, it'd go up about 19%. You won't go from like 141 to 177. Now, every year, if you go up 8 or 9%, that gets to be a pretty big number. Where did you come up with it? How did you come up with that cost sharing that would be the increases?
You would see very little if Brownstown wasn't willing to keep their current budget going. For 2024, what I've asked our township to do is to maintain our current budget, which is well above what our percentage would be if we were cost sharing. We're at about 27%. We're probably around 40 or 45% for year one. Because I've already have that budgeted, I've asked that they allow me to keep that, and I keep paying my 6 dispatchers that I'm budgeted for out of that. Year two, we split the difference. In year three, we're a full cost-sharing partner. Moving on beyond that, it would simply be whatever the increase in, labor costs would be,
Still,
primarily labor costs.
9%'s a lot each year, 9% each, because it's like, I think 16,000 or something.
That's just pushing off. Brownstown's paying well more than our, share. We're paying well more than
There's
our
no governor on
27%.
it, is my point. It could go, it's not going to be maintained at 4%, or it's going to be whatever you guys decide to share. And how did you come up with what Grosse Ile pays versus what, let's say, Gibraltar or whoever? How did you come up with that?
We looked at the calls for service for each community. We looked at the percentage of, we all share a similar CAD system with CAD's computer-aided dispatch. So we looked at
Volume.
the volume of calls. We also looked at the population and square miles and staffing levels, and we came up with a formula then that broke it up as a percentage for each agency.
But you didn't put in the age, because the age here is so much.
Kathy, I'm just curious if there's a misunderstanding in the graphic. You have one column with the percentage and one column with the cost per agency. I'm beginning to think that the percentage is the percentage of the whole that the agency is paying? Or is it an increase of that percentage?
If you take the difference between each year, it's like 16,000 more. It would
So
be
for like
9%.
2024, you're showing Grosse Ile at
141.
13.74%. Does that mean Grosse Ile currently pays 13.74% of the mutual aid cost, or is that an increase that we are getting for 2024?
That's 13% of the entire budget. That's what Grosse Ile's paying.
Okay,
13% of the budget. The reason that it went up between those 3 years is that Brownstown's not a full partner in this, right? We're paying more, and as you can see, even at year 3, we're still paying the most out of any of the downriver communities.
but you're showing us that basically for the first 2 years, Grosse Ile continues to stay at the same level of percentage of the overall. And then in year 4, you're showing that our percentage goes down, right?
Because-
Overall, the budget. Percentage of the budget goes down in year 3.
Because we jump in at year 3 as a
You
full
said
cost
that.
sharing. That percentage then will lock in beyond that year, and we'll all pay that percentage into, and this is what we didn't talk about was, this is gonna be governed by a board. Brownstown's not gonna call all the shots on this. We've set up the interlocal agreement that this is a board with 2 representatives from each community that will be on that board, and they will help us make those decisions and help us write the budget. And what we projected there includes what we projected cost of living increases based on our contract goes through 2025. Beyond 2025, that number's an estimate at this point. And what we also wrote into the interlocal agreement is that should there be a surplus, then it's pushed on to each community's portion the following year. So your cost could go down from that. So,
But 9% still, it might be the same percentage of the pie, but it's still a 9% increase year over year. It's still, in whole dollars, which is a lot. I mean, most people don't get 9% raises, and it is. And the thing is, you say that you'll be all agreeing on this, but what does I don't mean to be offensive, but what does Brownstown get? You're the leader of it. What kind of perk would you say you get? Is it because you have the facility there? I mean, what makes you guys do this? I mean, there's got to be something more in it.
I'm doing it simply because I see the benefit of a consolidated PSAP, and I don't think any of us are prepared for that critical incident. We can't do it alone. Like I said, it's wonderful staff sitting here. A job that I can't do. I couldn't, if you told me today, you got to retire or go do work dispatch, I'm going to retire.
I understand.
They do a tremendous job, but
just-
they're only one person. And the magnitude of in Uvalde, an MSU, a Nashville.
But it's hard to
Scares
compare,
me.
MSU is a huge place. I mean, Grosse Ile isn't, I mean, everybody's afraid, but you can't live in fear. But anyways, thank you for answering my questions.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Anybody else who'd like to ask a question, make a comment?
Chief, I got a question.
Sure.
John Camilleri, Grosse Ile Fire Chief. We're talking about incident. Let's say there's an incident in Trenton, so all the 911 calls are going to go to Brownstown, right? They're going to get overwhelmed, right? I have emergencies on Grosse Ile. People are trying to contact that central dispatch. They're not going to be able to get through. So my fire department, our fire department, is not getting 911 calls.
So we currently experience that throughout all of DMA,
Yeah.
right? We all have a backup community where 911
Mhm.
goes to. Remember that we're going to have the same amount of trunk lines coming in.
Right.
They're just into one building, not
Right.
throughout the whole
But
area.
you only have so many lines going in there.
Right.
Right, so, a flood occurs off-island, islanders are left without 911 service going into that central dispatch. That makes me feel very, very nervous. We have the oldest population downriver, as my
Can I,
esteemed
Carl?
trustee Bletcher states.
Point at Collar.
So I'm just concerned that it leaves Grosse Ile very vulnerable.
Bob, do you want to address that? You're my 911 expert here. Sure.
Bob, also, if you can answer, lead with John there, how many total will you guys have at Brownstown of lines coming in that can be answered? Not the actual line, like there's 4 dispatchers. Does that mean each dispatcher has 4 911s that can come in, or 3 or 2 or 1?
So our plan is to move every trunk that we currently have for any of the PSAPs that join. So I'll give you an example. Trenton has 3 911 trunks. They will come, all of them.
Gotcha.
If Groseal came, I think there's 3 here. You can answer that probably. Is there 3? Yeah, so we would move all 3 trunks directly to Brownstown. So in essence, what you would have would be 20 to 25, maybe 30 911 lines coming into that center.
Right.
One of the things that you do get out of a consolidation is you get a dedicated fire dispatcher. This is something we don't have today. If there's a fire ground somewhere, you don't have a dedicated person listening for maydays or listening for issues at that fire ground. So what this system will do, it'll give you a dedicated person. So, like we said earlier, there's always going to be bumps, but once we figure that out and work through it, just like Wyandotte had to do with those 4 communities, and they're operating pretty efficiently over there. But yeah, there's some learning curve. There's some things we have to tweak, of course, But the goal is always to provide better service, not lessen any service. I hope that
But it
helps.
is a fact that if you get an incident off Groseal is not going to have 911 service to your central dispatch.
Well, that's not accurate.
Well,
So
If you have an
911 trunks-
MSU incident in Trenton, you're going to
yes.
have 2,100 calls
Right,
to the
right.
central dispatch.
Right.
They're going to be locked out.
Well, they're going to be just like a single seat dispatch would be,
Right,
right? So
right.
the thing you're getting out of that is additional staffing to help manage that emergency, right? It doesn't even have to be a shooting. It can be a tornado or a flood, like you
But
mentioned.
there is that risk that could happen.
I don't know how, I can tell you, like, from the Wyandotte standpoint, I was there when they consolidated at Wyandotte. There's 4 communities. They make up almost half of what the total 911 call volume is for all downriver, those 4 communities. They're very busy. And they have never experienced an issue where they weren't able to get 911 resources to us.
But they haven't had a mass shooting.
None of us
incident.
have.
Exactly.
Yeah,
But
right.
if this is for that, if the argument is this is to accommodate that situation, and that occurs, Groseal is not going to have 911 service.
You're going to be in a better situation if you have more staff than you would be in a single seat. Because you're going to be overwhelmed here just as much
Where's the study that shows
as,
that?
if you look at the study that we had.
It's just that we have 4, 5, 6 more dispatchers, and in theory, I guess that's an
It's more
argument,
staff,
but as a practical matter, a flood is a flood. And I just don't want the Groseal residents to be locked out of 911 because we have a solution, or we have some other chemical
Well,
incident.
I think what you're going to see in a situation like that is all a DMA is going to respond, like they do today. When there's a, mutual aid call out, you go, we go, Brownstown goes. All those resources are just going to be coordinated in a different location.
Well, again, you're talking about 911 calls coming in from the public. Of course,
Right.
we'll use our inter-department communications, our
Sure,
radios,
sure, yeah,
to
right.
communicate, which is extra outside of this. But I'm concerned that, 2.5 weeks ago, we had 72 different scenes that the fire department responded to in about 30 hours. We probably had 300 phone calls to 911 during that period.
Mm-hmm.
And those 300 phone calls are going to have to be responded to. They did that.
Mhm.
So I'm just concerned if the argument is mass casualty shooting, and God forbid it ever happen, if we're arguing that there's 2,100 calls to from MSU, Groseal's going to be without a 911 service. And that could last for hours.
There's no difference today if something like that happened than there would be in a consolidation.
We would have dispatchers in the PD
And if they're
operating.
overwhelmed, if
But
they're
you only
overwhelmed,
have,
then you have
you
one
only have
person.
3 trunk lines coming into your dispatch center.
I
That
understand
means
that.
the caller number 4
Mhm.
is already getting pushed off somewhere else.
Right.
What Bob's trying to tell you is that they're, instead of going to Trenton, it would come to Brownstown.
Mhm.
Or in our case, if we fill up 25 lines,
DCD.
it's gonna go to DCD.
Right.
And we experience that. We get, with the ice storm, we got lots of calls from Downriver Central.
Mhm.
They're on the same radio system, right?
Mhm.
We all talk to each other, and, we sent resources and got them going, so.
My other question is, let's say dispatch sends me a radio transmission. Oh, sorry. Let's say dispatch sends me a radio transmission. 10 seconds goes by and I want to transmit back to the dispatch. Is my transmission going to go to a different dispatcher that it originally communicated with? What technology is there to ensure that I just communicated with the same dispatcher that I communicated with?
So in a consolidated dispatch scenario, you have a call taker that handles the calls coming in. You have a fire dispatcher that monitors the radios.
Yeah.
Okay, for
Yeah.
all fire, right?
Yeah.
And a police dispatcher. That fire dispatcher is going to be focused on your incident, right? Now, there may be a couple going on at the same time, right? Because there's a lot of agencies here. But they're going to be able to give you that dedicated radio communications that you know.
So this
something
fire
like that.
dispatcher is going to be handling 5 or 6 other communities and capable of communicating to me?
Oh, I can tell you that at Wyandotte, and I can only give you that example because that's where I came from, right? They are very busy, and they are able to handle that call volume in a very efficient manner. I think because of the actual call volume that you have amongst all these 8 communities only makes up about 27%
Yeah,
of the total.
yeah.
So I think with the staffing levels that Chief Watson has presented, I think you're going to have the ability to even slide a second person into a fire dispatch role if you had to, or a police dispatch role, or a call taker role. I think the staffing level that he's presented, I think is going to give you that flexibility.
Chief, if your dispatch cost was only $82,000 a year, which is what ours is, would you do this?
82,000.
That's all
for-
Groseal Fire Department pays for dispatch is $82,000. Would you lose the personal touch that you have with your dispatchers, your police officers, and your community for $82,000? Don't answer that. But that's a valid point. It's $82,000 we're talking for the Groseal Fire Department. Chief, thanks for all your work.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Jeff, before you leave, I didn't hear it correctly on one of the questions Johnny had. If we have 24 trunk lines, let's say, whatever we have, just say it's 24, and they're all full, and the 25th call comes in, where did you say that would go?
Downriver Central?
That would be
Wyandotte.
Wyandotte. I got you. Okay, so it does go somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's come to us, right? You know, we can always put a scenario out here that's, we can't manage, right? If we all, once again, the best thing that we can do as leadership is reduce the odds. And having 25 911 lines coming into a Downriver Central dispatch is no less the number of lines than we currently have. It's just spread out amongst the entire Downriver area. So.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Chief. I want to thank you and Bob for showing up and answering the questions. Are there any more questions from the?
Eric.
Yeah.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thanks for the Township Board for having this study session, for televising it. This would be a monumental change for the community if it were to happen. Recognize tonight is not a decision night, it's a study session night. Chief and Bob, thanks for coming and bringing your team with you and for all of the answers. My only request is to the Township Board that the Fire and Police Commission get ample time, if there is to be a decision, whether it's a no decision, an opt-in, or an opt-out, to come up with a good findings of fact. I think Sergeant Vasquez had a very good list of the pros and cons, or what we would lose, and I hope that the Township Board give us opportunity to properly give you the evidence or the data of what we would lose and the pros and cons of making this option. Thank you.
Oh, I can't see her.
My name is Maria Allen. I've been a dispatcher at Groseal PD for 22 years. I'm going to try to do this without crying. But I want you all to know that all of us are trained, EMD trained. They talked about Code Red. We all are trained on Code Red. We have Code Red here. All of us dispatchers are very capable of handling all our scenarios that you've talked about. We don't have a college here on Groseal. We have schools, and we've handled Adafina. Monica and I were the only ones here, but we handled it, and we handled it well. We took in tons of calls. I don't have numbers to tell you, but we dealt with it. Our hearts are here. I've given up every holiday. I've given up birthdays. I've given up everything for this township. I have a servant's heart. I'm here to serve Groseal. No offense to you. I don't want to serve Brownstown. Thank you.
Thank you, Celeste. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming out. Again, thanks to Chief and Bob.
Thank you so
Okay,
much.
thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.